Hi, it's Ed Lyons at Flint Optometry in Wolverhampton, and today I've had the pleasure of doing a sports vision assessment with Johnny Carter. So Johnny's been shooting for quite a long time, and when we've been working with Ed Lyons, we've noticed some interesting visual things with Johnny, with potentially a little bit of an eye dominance issue here, a visual clarity issue there, and he's worked out a really nice coping strategy of closing an eye on certain targets.
I used to squint an eye as a kid and everyone said, no, clearly.
Have you missed a target yet, Johnny?
Not yet.
So when we had a little look at Johnny's vision with Ed Solomon's glasses on over at Grimsthorpe, he could actually see through Ed's glasses, which is unusual because Ed's got a prescription where he needs a specific type of lens that works in a particular axis, so he's got some astigmatism. So it turns out that Johnny's got a little bit of this as well. Johnny sees really well, but in order to see as well and as clearly as he does, he actually has to put some physical effort in. Now, we've talked in previous videos about our eyes working like video cameras, and in order to see clearly, the lens inside the eye has to change shape. So it has to go from a flat to a fatter, more powerful shape for closer and intermediate tasks. And what happens, particularly when people are spending so much time on the computer, on iPads and editing videos, is that if that lenticular focus change is happening too much, then the eyes can start to get tired. But I mean, when did you personally start shooting?
When I was 14.
Okay. History, anybody in your family wear specs?
Everybody.
Okay. You got brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Okay, and do they wear specs
Yes.
all the time? Okay. When we assessed Johnny, we found that with both eyes open, his vision's pretty good. From a shooting perspective, pretty good isn't necessarily good enough. Where it started to get really interesting was when we took his right eye out of the equation, that the visual skill, the visual clarity really dropped down.
I mean, I can barely make that one above it.
Right. If we swap over to this one.
EVPHNDA.
Yeah, so is that a better image, would you say?
Oh, well, significantly, yeah.
So what's happening here is we've got an eye, an image that's really quite highly detailed, and another signal that's a little bit weaker. So what I'm hypothesising is that when Johnny's shooting with both eyes open, the slightly muddy signal from the left is clouding the overall picture.
A little bit nervous. Hopefully we come up with something good, although actually thinking about how long I spend in front of a computer or a phone, probably 4 hours a day on the phone, 30 hours in front of a computer a week. We'll see.
Sometimes for some people, closing an eye down, it cleans up the overall signal.
Yeah.
Because occasionally we can find that the fuzzy eye is just confounding the picture.
Okay.
And then occasionally you can get a miscommunication between the two eyes. Like if you go into a room and there's two speakers, and one of the speakers could be crystal clear, and one of the speakers is a bit staticky, that ruins the whole sound.
Yeah.
So if you turn the crackly speaker off, it just makes things nicer. So you go from stereo to mono, but the mono is better. We found by making some prescription lenses, we can take Johnny's vision from a very good level to an exceptional level. And I was actually surprised at how good we could get that left eye to perform.
That cleans that up remarkably. You have to work quite hard to do that. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, you're making that physical effort to see all the time. Sometimes if we've had somebody who's got an eye that performs really well and one that's a little bit weaker, no matter what we do to the weaker eye, it doesn't necessarily achieve the same level of acuity as the other one, because occasionally the brain will tend to turn it off and ignore it. When we put those lenses in for Johnny, bang, the sharpness and the clarity that I really wanted, it just came in.
Plus, it's actually kind of nice to see it develop.
Yeah.
And it gives you a lot more confidence in what we've just done, because you go, well, we've tried everything now.
Yeah.
Whereas a press the button, look in the machine, spits a glasses set out, and you go, yeah, that's all you know.
Yeah. And we found that when we just moved the lenses a couple of degrees, we gained even more sharpness. And this is where, in Johnny's case, a set of prescription shooting glasses is going to be really, really helpful. I wouldn't do a contact lens because we might find a subtle amount of rotation of that lens on his eye would give him periods of where the vision's really sharp and other periods where it goes a bit blurry again. So a really nice set of high performance digital shooting glasses are going to be coming Johnny's way in the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to be really interested to see how he feels with those. So rather than looking at letters, with this one, we're going to give you a shape, and it's a ring with a gap in it. What you need to be able to do is to identify the position of that gap. Now, each time you get it right, that's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, up to a point where you physically can't see it. And that's fine. If you can't see it, have a guess. We're going to do a group of filtration, so something for sunny days, something for medium light and something for low light as well. What I want to find out from Johnny is how he feels getting used to that type of prescription. He can also use them to drive in. Johnny's one of those type A personality people who wants detail, he wants it to be clear, so we're going full hog, 100% full prescription lens. But there's going to be a little bit of learning how to use those lenses. That means when the glasses are ready, we're going to arrange a shooting session, maybe at Grimsthorpe, maybe at Sporting Targets, somewhere with Mr. Solomons, so we can then assess how the vision feels with these new glasses. When we make a fundamental change to how somebody sees, it can then mean that the sight pictures are a little bit different. And we then need to work with the shooter and the instructor about how to read where that target now appears to be. And that can be from something as simple as changing your habitual hold points, changing where you would kill a target, and just making sure that we can adapt that technique to take into account that that visual system has been optimised. Good, well then, you can pop your glasses off now. This again can be important from a gun fit perspective, and that's why we get you to do the test looking like this and looking like that and changing around, because where my head and body sits then dictates where my eyes go. So my eyes here are in a different position to when I'm there.
Yeah, so when you're there with someone saying do an eye so you're doing this but you mount a gun.
Correct. And depending on everybody's sort of face shape and physiology, then you know where Ed mounts, he mounts into his bicep.
Yeah.
He likes that. Other people like to have a really sort of head-up position. Other people are really more crouched down. But for instance, if you are into a, say a trap shooter, somebody's got a really hard cheek mount and they're down like that, then their eyes have to be upwards and laterally displaced. And if you've got an eye muscle issue where either the innervation doesn't get to the muscles properly or the eye muscles start to get fatigued, then sometimes they'll change their head and body position to take the stress off the eye muscle.
Interesting.
And occasionally you want to adjust or fit a gun based on how people's eyes work. One thing I'm not sure about is how this is going to affect the eye dominant side of things, and I'm really interested to discover this. When we did the physiological diplopia test with Johnny, which is essentially do you see two fingers or do you see two barrels when you're shooting, Johnny's just seeing the one. And that's fine. And I think that's down to the left eye not necessarily being sharp and crisp enough to be able to see that secondary or that ghost picture. And it may be that when we have the shooting glasses, we actually create a little bit of an eye dominance quirk because we're going to be switching both eyes onto 100%. So we need to work out whether we still need to occlude the eye, or by learning which barrel goes where and with the optimized picture, everything starts to knit together. We're also going to do some vision training work as well. And a couple of years ago through COVID, I designed these vision training aids because shooters were asking me, what can I do to keep my visual system at top performance when I'm not allowed to shoot? So we put together some exercises for shooters to use. We've also used them with footballers, rugby players, boxers, all sorts of stuff. So we've given Johnny a series of 2D visual equipment and also access to an app, which I'll try and find. That is Johnny's visual score, which as you can see is actually really rather good. So opportunities for Johnny to improve here are his near-far focusing speed, his multiple object tracking, reaction time and target capture. Other areas, such as his overall hand-eye coordination and contrast sensitivity, are pretty good, but there are some other little tools here that we can use and optimise. So I'm really looking forward to how we get on with the collection of the specs and the vision training work and see how it works.
The day is finally here.
Indeed.
I'm wearing glasses.
You are.
This is a new moment in my life.
Yeah, and this is going to be really interesting because Johnny hasn't worn glasses for years and years and years and years, if ever. And I think when we did the eye examination, it was at least 20 years before we even had a check. And when we looked at Johnny's visual performance, he was actually seeing really quite nicely, but not to the optimal level where we thought we could. And there's a conflict between how the two eyes work together, because your right eye sees quite nicely, the left eye is a little bit defocused. So that means your visual cortex in your brain, which is the computer that does all that visual processing, is getting asymmetric information. And it can feel quite nice in a way to be not hyper focused all the time, and you've become accustomed to that. And we said there's actually a relationship between how your eyes focus and where they point in space. So at the moment, there's a little bit of recalibration for you to adapt to having both cameras now in HD.
I mean, I almost missed picking up a cup of coffee earlier.
Yeah, we noticed that. And you noticed you had feet for the first time as well. It was,
yeah,
that was
looking
incredible.
down is bizarre.
It's a long way down, so most people need a prescription to see that.
So what we said was, shall we tone the prescription down a little bit, or shall we go full beans? And we've gone full beans. So this is why at the moment it's feeling a little bit unusual.
It's very different.
Yeah, and getting used to that sort of spatial awareness will take a bit of time. So with these, we've done a really nice high contrast lens to just give plenty of brightness and extra data, which is going to be really good in poor light levels like this. And we've also done the polarized ones, which are much darker. The polarized ones may feel initially more comfy because it kind of calms everything down. And what we want to try and do is adapt to the prescription by wearing them in the car, maybe TV and that sort of stuff, and almost resist the temptation to take them off, because then we just go back to how we were before. And the whole point of this is maybe a little bit of initial visual discomfort, which will soon pass, to make sure that you're seeing to that super high standard that you can.
Yeah.
Should we go look at some targets?
Yeah, let's go look at some targets.
Sounds good.
That target looked very big.
Excellent.
I think that might be good.
You're going to miss it then.
It's very likely I will miss it. We'll have a look. That's miles in front of it.
Darting way in front.
Yeah.
And you're probably now seeing that so much better that you're racing off in front of it. Wait for it to come to your barrel before you start going. Your hands are going, you don't need to chase it. Your whole point's fine. Wait, see it come into your barrel, then move on to it. It's going to be a straight at it shot, but let it come into
Less
your gun.
rush.
There we go.
Unsurprisingly, two of the best people in their fields weren't wrong when they said it might be a little bit different when you shoot with. Everything is slower. There is more time.
Yeah, one of the things
more
I think you'll start to now realise as you get some more lead through the gun is everything should actually slow down rather than speed up. It's just going to have a little bit of a period of normalisation.
Reducing one's panic.
Yeah.
It is chalk and cheese.
Now your brain's perceiving the target to be possibly slightly closer than it has been.
Definitely.
So some of your volumes will be a little bit off, but that's what this morning's going to be about. Just dial it in.
Shooting straight at the back edge of that, which is doesn't feel natural to me.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yep, it will do.
What I've found most interesting about that is a lot of things you've said in the past, listening to you speak to other people, because you speak to everyone so individually, suddenly makes a bit more sense. Watching that first target into the gun, I wouldn't be able to do that before. And you can't just watch it, bang.
Yeah, and it just becomes a point and shoot shot.
Yeah, as opposed to smashing up blurs or missing blurs.
Yeah.
All right.
Next stand.
Yeah, I mean, relatively simple stand, seemed like a monumental task to start with. What is the average sort of length of time people take once they've got new eyes to...
It very much depends on the person. So, I mean, when we modified your prescription, you said it took maybe 1,000 shells to get used to the new sight pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've both got a small amount of astigmatism, which is a difference in the curvature, either of the front of the eye or the lens inside. You've probably got twice as much astigmatism than Johnny's got, but you've made these subconscious adaptations to dealing with it yourself. But that just meant that the visual picture that you've got isn't crisp and ideal. Some people find that when they have the astigmatism prescription, they put the glasses on or put the inserts on, and the distortion that they get feels so alien that the easiest thing to do is just take them off. But like if you ever have a brace when you're a kid, it feels horrible, but you can't take the brace off. So you suddenly adapt to it and you just realise, actually, I can't even feel it anymore. So it's very similar to that from the visual processing side of things. With you, I think because you're quite committed to doing it, and if you're going to wear them in the car and such, it should just become supernatural, and you should find that within a few days, you'll notice how much better things feel because we're improving that eye synchronicity. But as Ed said, you've got to put some time behind the gun and put some targets, some shells through it, and make sure that you're learning those new pictures, because you're going to see the targets differently.
The more you wear them, the easier it's going to get. That's like a quartering kind of targets. Again, your perception might be a little bit off on this.
Edgy targets are way more visible. I really shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It's kind of nice, isn't it?
Absolutely spot on. A little bit twitchy on the second one.
I stayed with it for...
Yeah, and I think you just had too long a connection before you started.
I could see it out of the trap
because
arm.
you could see it so early.
Yeah, the connection is totally different because you can actually connect. You can actually spend your time. You actually understand what's happening a little bit more.
Good.
And you look good when you miss.
I mean, that is the only important thing here.
Yeah, just watch it into your gun and push
Great
off.
move off the front edge.
Very little perceived lead for you on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then second one, nothing?
Literally, I think.
Front edge.
Come off the back end and just
gun
come into it.
Yeah,
bang.
fine. Yeah, no, cool. That tees up with what I'm seeing down your shoulder. It's just interesting to see. You're probably going to find your recurring issue at the moment is going to be a desire to jump out in front of stuff just because you're seeing it so much earlier now than you have been. Yeah. And you're just going to have to back your timing down to see it, watch it come, then move, rather than see it and let your hands go.
Really tempting that first one to connect up right early, which I did the first few, and it just makes it difficult.
Yes, difficult. Second target in particular, if you don't watch that come into your gun, that isn't going to break. It's like the quartering bird you shot in the first stand. If you put a space on that early, so game over.
Much less movement with the second one.
No, not so much, just not less movement, but more time waiting before you start moving, because your whole point's good, but you're seeing it and your hands are going straight out and you're putting the space on.
Very tempting.
Watch it come into the gun and then move. That's all you're missing. First one, fine, just I think you're again just doing a little bit too much with it. Just as you come off its nose, pull the trigger.
So it turns out eyes are quite cool when they work.
Yeah, it's good having both of them, isn't it?
That is bizarre. I mean, I've been walking around like a
confused stork.
Yeah, that's better than what I was going to say. I do think that eyesight is not overrated, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it's about getting you to see to your potential, because before you were sort of seeing pretty well, but it wasn't super crisp. And we know now when you're seeing the target, you're possibly seeing it earlier than you have done before.
Off the trap arm?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
And we've kind of improved your frame rate in a way. So we're going to see the clay come out of the trap in 3 different phases. It'll be a flash where it's under too much power to be able to see it. Then there's a streaky comet tail thing, and then there's a clear, distinct target. And the way in which you make visual contact with the target is going to dictate your technique. So now you're maybe seeing it earlier, you're possibly getting a little bit excited and getting in front of stuff. Yeah. So it's about relearning that sight picture, taking into account this new sight that you've got from your specs.
And one of the things I think that's quite apparent now is we're going to start pulling your hold points slightly tighter into the trap from where they've historically been, because you're now seeing the target much earlier. And with your old hold points, you failed to connect with the bird. A lot of the time you're pushing out in front of it before you got a connection, and you were finishing out in front of the bird. Now, by pulling your hold point slightly tighter into the machine, where you're now seeing the target clearly, so probably 15 foot on some of the birds, 15, 20 foot earlier, we're now pulling that hold point back in so you can get your connection earlier and then make a nice smooth move out away from the bird, rather than the historical hold point where you had to hold out further because you weren't seeing the target clearly. You then connected later and made your move away. Now you're seeing the target earlier, you've got an earlier connection, but you need to now address your hold points, and that's been the recurring theme, has actually been pulling your hold points noticeably closer into the machines, but that's just worked perfectly for you, because when you were holding out and punching in spaces, you were in front of everything, as you
unfortunately realised.
Yes.
That's a pretty common recurrence when people get their eyes improved, is to do that way.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's different instances, right, for different people. One of the other things you find people doing is shorting targets lead-wise, because they look so much closer, and so they're going, oh, this is historic, they're 10 yards closer, so I only need to shoot at the front edge of that. And actually, in reality, it's the bird that they were shooting they probably thought was 30 yards out previously, and now it just looks like it's at 20 because they're seeing it clearer. So it's not always a case of when you've got new glasses you have to pull your hold points in, or you have to stretch your lead pictures out. It's going to be personal depending on how it affects them, but one of the things you can pretty much guarantee is there will be some changes, as you found out.
Yes, I think it's going to be a long road. You mentioned about 1,000.
I think when I used to shoot and I changed prescription, I thought it took about 1,000 rounds for me to get it dialed in to where I was, back to where I was. So yeah, that's about 4 years worth of shooting now for me.
Gentlemen, thank you.
You're most welcome. It's well worth having a bash with some of the vision training stuff that we talked about as well, because we need to just get you more comfortable with using the 2 eyes together as kind of like a synchronous system, rather than being used to having each eye working not totally independently, but one being in the background. We're looking at getting the picture to be locked together. So that little vision training stuff that we talked about, the online work and the sort of real space stuff, that will make a quite tangible difference.
I'd sooner you can shoot 2 eyes than one. Yep. However, what was happening before was definitely hampering you. Now we might well be able to train you out of that,
and it is a longish road.
Yeah, it's not just a case of do this and now you're fixed.